Welcome food fans, picky eaters, the flavor curious, and everyone in between. Nothing makes good food better than good conversation. And your table is ready. Come right this way to the Food for Thoughtcast with your host, Melissa Reagan. But you can call her Chef. All right, let's get this episode started.
Hi there, Food for Thoughtcast fam. Today's guest is Beth Fuller. She comes to us from the New England area. She's a professional commercial and editorial photographer, and her subject, you guessed it, is food. She's also a fellow food fan like you and I, and a recent contestant on Netflix's Cook at All Cost. I know you'll enjoy getting to know her as much as I did. Let's get started. Good morning, Beth. How are you?
Great. How are you, Melissa?
Fantastic. We are just starting the Food for Thoughtcast with me, your host, Melissa Reagan. This is Beth Fuller. Beth, where are you from?
I am from New England. So I grew up in southern New Hampshire in a little town, and it's not really a little town. It got voted best city in America twice in the 90s, I think.
That's impressive.
At least once in the 90s and once in like the early 2000s. And then I now live in Metro West Boston in Massachusetts.
Excellent. Awesome. How did you get into the industry?
So it depends which industry you're talking about. I'm into a lot of industries. I'm into
so industrious. Okay.
I know,
Start
right?
at the top.
So I am a food photographer. I'm a professional food photographer, and that's how I make a living. And then I also have a podcast called the Food Adventures Podcast. And both I just kind of stumbled into. I've been a photographer for over 25 years, and I have also been in the food industry in various forms for my entire career. And when I combined the two, it just like magic started happening. And now I do it full time, and I've been doing it full time for a handful of years now. I run my own business, and it's fantastic.
That's awesome. I'm so glad to hear that. So why photography specifically? What did it take for you said that you were involved in the restaurant industry and like various facets, but when did this switch finally flip?
Sure. So during COVID, before COVID happened, I was director of sales for events for major universities in Boston. And when COVID happened, and let me back up. I've always done photography as a passion project. I went to school for it, just didn't know when I went to school for it, it was still doing it in the dark room. It was all film, nothing digital wasn't a thing yet. And because I'm 42. So then when I transitioned out of college, because I minored in photography, I didn't major in it. And by the time it took me forever to get a bachelor's degree in anything. I mean, like I went the long route. Over 10 years, but I finally did it. And when I did do it, it was like, I just want to hurry up and finish. And what's the quickest way I can finish? And I didn't want to take on more loans and go to like mass art or a specific art school. Mm-hmm. So I ended up getting a degree in communications. I have a minor in photography. But when I came out of college, I was bartending at the time. I was like, I need a job that pays. What can I do? Where's my skills? What do I have behind me? And oddly enough, I just went for event planning. And so I did that for a number of years, still did photography on the side, but didn't make a living doing it. And then when COVID happened, events stopped. I mean, the whole world stopped, right. But events really stopped. And I then decided to pick up my camera again and really, really go for it. Through the podcast, I know I needed media, and as one does, to promote their podcast. And so first came the podcast, kind of like what came first, the chicken or the egg.
Right.
So first came the podcast in 2020 because I just missed connecting with people. So I started the podcast, and then I was like, I need to market this darn thing. So then I picked up my camera again, and I just started taking, and the podcast is all very food centric. So I started taking food photos.
Right.
And then next thing you know, I'm tagging brands in them. And I just fell so deeply back in love with it that I was like, this is exactly what I'm meant to do right now in my life. And I've had a sales
Isn't that
background.
the best feeling?
It really is. And I've had, because of my sales background for, 15 years doing event sales and being the director of sales of departments and making these companies millions upon millions of dollars every year.
Right.
I was like, I can do this for myself. And I do it. And I am a one-woman team. And man, oh man, I don't mess around and I don't look back. And I'm kind of building the parachute as I've jumped out of the plane since then. And it's amazing.
It sounds terrifying and thrilling all at once.
Totally. And it is. Some days are more terrifying than thrilling, but most days are a good combo of both.
So for somebody like me, typically I go to take a selfie and I have the camera facing the wrong way on my phone. I wouldn't call myself a photographer at all. But with social media, right, we're all kind of amateur food photographers from meal to meal because we must document everything we've eaten, right? And so what would you suggest for a person like me that's not really good with a camera or their phone camera? How can they just make their food look better? Like on a regular day?
Okay, so what you want to do is, because I'm a studio photographer, so I shoot in artificial light. Mm-hmm. I use a lot of modifiers to modify the light. Really, it's for food photography specifically. You are bending the light around the food. And so what you want to do is find a window. If you don't have access to fancy studio lights and you're just using your iPhone, find a window, put the food next to the window, and you want it to be like, if you're holding your muffin needs to be, you want the window to side light the muffin. Either side light, that ideally, right? Like the food photography, the light looks best when it's coming in from the side, coming in slightly from behind, never front lighting. Like if nobody can see me in your listener world right now, but I'm facing a window. So my face, when you're shooting portraiture, the light, it's great when the light comes directly at you because then it kind of smooths out all your imperfections in your face and you get this kind of glowy look. But with food, you want to see the texture. You want to see the different nuances in the, tomato or the muffin or the nooks and crannies of a waffle. And to get that, you need a balance of brightness and shadow to effectively show that. So long-winded answer. I mean, you're asking a professional who does this all day long, so I can keep going.
No, I really want to know.
The long-winded answer is stand next to a window, make sure whatever you're shooting is kind of either to the side of the window or slightly like in behind you, the light's coming in from the side or behind. And I can guarantee your food's going to look much better. So your food will look much better if it's lit that way than dead on or the overhead lights in a restaurant. Right. And then it makes the food look flat. You just don't want the food to look flat. You want it to look with depth and dimension.
That makes tons of sense. I never even thought about it. So when we're taking pictures of other people, we obviously don't want to be able to see their pores. That's not ideal. But I really never thought about the differences between like somebody's face, for instance, and the surface of a sandwich where you want to see every little air pocket, right?
Exactly. You want to see the texture of the bread. You want to see it all. And like commercial and editorial photography, the lines are a little blurred. That's what I shoot is commercial and editorial photography, and I'm a food product and lifestyle photographer in those nooks. And, with real commercial photography, if you're talking like ad campaigns for Burger King or something like that, you're going to have a prop stylist, you're going to have a photographer, you're going to have multiple art directors on set. You're going to have photo assistants. You're going to have the food stylist is going to be there with a food stylist assistant, the prop assistant. There's a lot of people that are touching that burger.
There's a lot of moving parts. Yeah,
there is. And like to get the drip on the tomato just right, or to get the burger looking just juicy, there's so many tricks and it takes years to master. So, and some people don't master it. And the ones who are amazing are just mind-blowingly amazing. So don't be frustrated with yourself if your food photos don't look like what you see in an ad campaign, but lighting makes a world of a difference, like world of a difference. And if anyone wants to deep dive more into this, there's a woman named Joni Simon on YouTube. Her name is The Bite Shot. She is unbelievably wonderful at teaching food photography, from using your cell phone to investing in doing this maybe as a part-time gig or a full-time gig. She is
That's awesome.
Wealth of information and knowledge. Can't recommend her enough.
That's awesome. After this episode comes out, I'll be sure to link to her information on the website as well for the Food for Thoughtcast. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah,
it is absolutely mind-blowing how much goes into a food photo shoot. As a chef, I've been involved in quite a few myself, and it's almost like the food itself is a pop artist or a diva, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And you have to do all these takes, all these photos, all these adjustments. What I couldn't get over was how much food had to be cooked for each photo shoot. Hundreds of pieces of bacon, 10 or 15 different burger buns. And it was just because, like, hey, this sesame seed doesn't look right, or this piece of bacon cooked more flat and didn't curl up at the end. It was crazy. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah. And like on larger shoots, you do so much pre-production planning. You do storyboards, there's shot lists, there's prop lists, there's mood boards. I mean, like, and so many people go through them over and over and over again. And then, I mean, that's just like before you even get on set. There's so much planning involved. And then once you get on set, it's a very tedious. You don't have to be type A. I'm not a type A type of person. Food photography is made up of small, teeny, tiny little moves over and over and over and over again. And all of a sudden, everything just clicks and you get the shot. And you're like, okay, we got it. We can move on. The food dies so quickly on set.
Well, you have heat from the lights and everything else, right?
But I mean, like food, like bacon, once it gets cold, it starts getting cold, it ain't pretty. Chicken,
that fat gets a sheen on it.
So there's just certain things that don't look good. Most food does not look good, regardless of even if you're shooting in natural light after a certain amount of time, let alone freaking ice cream or popsicles or something like that, like yellow's.
Right. I can imagine. I can't even fathom. It's hard for me to wrap my head around a muffin having its own storyboard. That's that's really visual storytelling, right? At its core. Oops, I made a food pun, but yeah. So it's like, what's the muffin's backstory? What direction does it like the light coming from? What do you think about the relationship between, I brought it up a little bit earlier, but do you feel like there's an overlap between your industry and social media? Do you think it makes it worse? Do you think it takes away from what you do? Or how do you think the two work together?
I mean, social media is a great marketing tool. If you don't get, I think the thing, and it's not necessarily even with my industry, it's because I don't buy into the whole everyone has a camera, so everyone's a photographer kind of thing. Everyone can be a photographer. I'm not saying that. There's a fine line between being a professional and an amateur, and it just comes with decades of experience. And there's a lot of things. As somebody like you, who's a professional chef who has decades of experience, you know, you see all these home cooks that come out of the gate, myself included, who I would never call myself a chef. Like I would call myself, I have kitchen confidence. I have culinary confidence. I've been cooking since I was a tiny little toddler in the kitchen with everybody, but I am not a professional chef by any stretch of the imagination, nor did I earn that title going to school for it or working in a professional setting. Right. But in terms of like, I think the thing with social media in general, I wrote my senior thesis in college on the effects of, this is before social media was a thing, because like I said, I'm 42. I think that it's easy to get caught up in feeling like you're not where you should be in life, in whatever profession you're in, because you see it's so inundated with so many people showing all the best sides of themselves, showing that they're working all the time or that they're advancing and doing whatever it is that you might be interested in. And that you feel like, oh my God, am I being left behind right now? Like, why am I not doing that? Why do I not have that client? Why do I not have that job? And I think that's one of the biggest pitfalls of social media, because people are not being authentic there. I mean, maybe some people are. I don't know.
It's fake.
It's showing like the best sides of their life versus the grind part of it. So I think you can develop, if you go down the spiral, you can really fall into like imposter syndrome and things like that.
Absolutely.
But I mean, it's a great marketing tool. It's a time suck. I have no problem with social media. I'm not on God, I barely understand TikTok. And it took my 22-year-old cousin explaining it to me last year. And even then I still didn't get it. So like I'm basically an Instagram kind of person. And other than that, I don't use Twitter. I've never had a Twitter.
Right.
Don't really go on Facebook just to see when people's birthdays are, that kind of stuff. Like
it's definitely useful for that. It's super helpful tool.
Yeah.
Well, it's for my generation, it's almost like your meal doesn't exist unless you document it in photo form, which I think is at some times fun and at other times is super annoying. Like just enjoy the meal, just enjoy the food. But I don't think, that experience isn't for nothing, right? There are some impressive shots that can come off of people's iPhones. And yet, like you say, at the same time, it doesn't mean that you've paid your dues anywhere, right?
Yeah, I mean,
it's different levels, different experiences for everybody.
It is. I think phone cameras are great for if you're just doing that. There is absolutely no way. There is no way you can use a phone camera for a high-end editorial magazine. Like there is absolutely no way. And it comes down to pixel count. There's so much nuance to it. No.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just like anything else, right? The difference between a person who's learning how to do a task and a person who's been doing it professionally for a long time and an amateur, it really all comes down to nuance.
Yeah.
Nuance and finesse, right?
Yeah, that and the right equipment for the job. Like if you are in the culinary field and you're using those, and I don't want to knock anyone's knives, but say you show up to work and executive chef shows up with one of those red knives, green knives. You know what I mean?
Yes, I know what you mean. 100%.
Yeah. You would look at him and be like, what are you serious right now? No tea, no shade, but
that's part of building those years of experience into whatever activity or task or whatever you're doing on a day-to-day basis. You're going to, just like you're collecting all the experiences and the wisdom and the knowledge, you're also going to start amassing equipment and your tools.
Because you need a good knife bag. You need good knives. You don't want to cut your fingers off. The worst thing in the kitchen is a dull knife. That is literally the most dangerous thing in the kitchen.
Yep.
And so it's kind of you just, when you're a professional doing it, you just, like you said, you build on your skill set and you also build on what you need, the gear you need in order to do the job to the caliber at which someone's hiring you to do it.
Right. It's just a constant leveling up. Right. And as you go from level to level, maybe you're going to get a new set of knives. Maybe you're going to get a new DLR, right? Maybe you're going to get something different, something new, and whatever projects you're taking on, they're going to require different levels of and different types of equipment. I touched on it a little bit earlier, but how much food has to be produced for a photo shoot.
It's sad. Sometimes it's really sad. I've worked on shoots where, it's an amazing amount of food you bring in to find the perfect piece of spinach to find.
Right.
And then I've worked on shoots. I feel like the industry in ways is leaning more towards embracing the imperfections. As a photographer, I don't mind when the tomato doesn't look perfect. I don't mind when something's a little not damaged, but that there's character to it.
Yeah, it comes from nature. Nothing's going to come from nature perfectly round, right?
Yeah, I think in the industry as a whole is kind of shifting towards that a little bit, which is great because hopefully it reduces the amount of food waste. Because the problem with food photography is the food sits on set for so long. And as someone who's taken many serve safe classes over my lifetime, you cannot give that away.
Yeah. It's not safe to eat anymore.
It's not. And there's liability issues and no one wants to be sued for food poisoning. Right. And nor do I want to poison anybody.
Absolutely.
And a lot of the proteins, as you know, for someone who's cooked, been culinary support on a shoot, that they're not really cooked sometimes to be edible. They're cooked because you want them to look really pretty.
Yeah.
And so there's that piece of it. I mean, if I'm shooting, for example, this week while we're recording this, tomorrow I have to shoot with, I have my friend who's a food stylist coming over my studio, and we're going to shoot tacos, a full taco spread, and we're going to shoot a full waffle breakfast.
That's
spread.
making me hungry right now.
I know, I'm starving. And so when we do that, we'll have a ton of food on set for these two very large setups. But her and I will make sure that, like, at the end of the day, we'll package it all up. We'll probably eat some for lunch. We'll eat some for dinner. And like, there are shoots and sets that we do eat. Usually the food's cold by the time we can eat it, because you cannot touch anything. Like, and the other big rule of thumb is you never, ever start a shoot hungry. Don't even, like, it's
kind of like going to the grocery store, right? God, you're going to spend twice as much if you're hungry.
But it takes, like, for a single shot, like yesterday I was shooting and I only had 2 shots on the shot list, and it took close to 6 hours to shoot the 2 shots, because it just takes so much time sometimes for it all to come together and get the lightings tweaked and get, like, the, everything, get the apple right, get the whatever it is that you're shooting. And so if you think, oh, I'm going to shoot food and I'll just eat it when I'm done, but you're kind of hungry when you start, like, you're not going to eat that for hours. So come well fed.
By the time you get to the end of it, if you started off just a little bit hungry and then you have to smell and look at it all day, you're going to be ravenous. Maybe you're going to be hangry.
And there's no, like, taking, like, sneaky little bites while the food stylist or the culinary support's cooking. Like, it's not like that. Like, you absolutely cannot touch the heroes for the shot. Like, the heroes are like the whatever, like in the tacos, the tacos are the heroes, of the shoot. Like, don't even touch a tiny piece of anything. Does
that mean in tacos a sandwich that gets to be a hero on a food shoot?
No. Hey. The hero is the star. So whatever.
I kid.
Yeah, no, not like in a no.
So it's like, finally, it gets its comeuppance. It's a sandwich. Nope, it's just a taco.
Right?
All right.
Yeah, no, it's still a taco. I'm sad to see the food waste. I think the industry's in the way that food costs are right now. I think we're all trying to make the most out of what we can. Like I said, I've been on a ton of sets. I shoot for a very popular magazine in Boston, and we always make sure that food gets packaged up, put in the community refrigerator, that people can take it home for lunch or dinner or whatever it is.
I love that.
And there's a lot of sets that do that. So when it's safe and the food is safe to be consumed afterwards, we always make sure that there are to-go containers. People can take whatever they want, eat it once it's dead. Once we got the shot, then, like, people can eat whatever they want. Yeah. So try to minimize the amount of waste.
I love that so much. And in our business, so many things hit the trash can unnecessarily, as a whole, right? Restaurants, catering, event planning, food photography, no matter what facet of this industry it is, so much food hits the trash. And I think for sustainability reasons, I do agree with you that there is a shift across the industry. And it probably started with sustainable to-go packaging. And that was several years back, but I think there's more inroads being made there. For sure.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, even when I worked in large scale event planning for event sales for a massive, I worked for MIT for many years, and I would do huge community events for, 5, 6, 7,000 people that you're feeding, if not more. And when you get up into those numbers, especially in event world, like, you have to plan for a certain amount of overage that you, as a culinary, there's going to be. This would be like full box trucks, just with warmers stacked with, like, fried chicken that just didn't get eaten, that was made ready to go. And I mean, it's on a volume that large, like, so we had partnerships with different food banks in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Call them right as the event was ending and be like, yo, come now. You have to literally come now, because the food will become,
it's got to be within the next, hour, right?
Yeah, exactly. Safe. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's nice to be able to partner with organizations like that, for sure.
I love that so much. I love it. There's a certain part of our business, I would argue that most of our business, right, is feeding people for the exchange of money. And I think the partnerships where we're able to give back to the community like that are worth their weight in gold.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I want to know what your
Mhm.
go-to easy dish is. Say that you had maybe 2 6-hour food photo shoots in a day.
Mhm.
What are you making when you get home? Are you making anything?
Yeah, I always have, well, depends, but I always, always, always have on hand stuff to make carbonara. Always.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
an authentic Roman carbonara. For those who don't know, an authentic carbonara from Rome, it's really simple ingredients. There is
Mhm.
nothing to this. It's Parmigiano Reggiano, it is Pecorino Romano, freshly grated cheeses, black pepper, little salt if you like things salty. Usually it's guanciale, which is the pork fat and the jowl of the pig. If
Right.
you don't have that, in a pinch, pancetta, and in a bigger
Right.
pinch, bacon.
Yeah.
As long as it's not like maple smoked bacon or anything like that. Like you really, I mean,
Oof, that would be
we're
so
talking like
strange.
a pinch. But I always have stuff in the freezer for carbonara, like
I'd love it.
pork products, right? And then I always have pasta on hand and I always have eggs. Always. And really it's just egg yolks, a couple of whole eggs, a bunch of grated cheese. You render the pork down and then you boil the water, make sure you reserve some pasta water, and then you just make it all work. And when you stir in the egg, because you mix the egg and the cheese mixture together until it gets like nice and creamy, and you'll see all of a sudden it just becomes, I can do it by sight now. Cheesy, eggy paste is the best way I can describe it, with a little movement to it.
Yep.
And then when you take the pasta off, reserve a little pasta water, plop that into the pan that you just did the bacon. I'm so hungry. And
I know.
I'm starving right now. And then add a tiny bit of the pasta water. And then I turn off the heat because the hot pasta, the warm pasta water, and I mean like
Sure.
a couple of tablespoons just to start to see what you need. And then I add in the egg cheese mixture and it just becomes this silky, creamy, emulsified, oh my gosh, I'm so hungry, saucy pasta. It's everything.
It's so good.
And it's so easy.
I love a good carbonara, the correct way, the way that you're talking about, like the very traditional.
Yeah. No cream. God, if
Yeah.
you put cream in this, I swear I will find you and I will hunt you down. Do not put cream in your carbonara.
You heard it here first.
Don't put peas.
Put peas in the carbonara.
No.
They don't go in there.
No. What is wrong with America?
Oh, well, so many things. I don't know if we have time on today's podcast. And I'm just talking about food wise, but
yeah, I know.
So that's your go-to easy. You always have on hand.
Always.
That's what you want for comfort, right? After a long day.
Yeah.
What's your go-to, I want to feel fancy dish that you make at home? Do you have one?
Oh God, I don't know. I mean, if I'm feeling fancy, now you got me thinking, I would make an effort to find a recipe that I have never made before that usually has, I collect cookbooks, so I have an obscene amount of cookbooks. And I will dig through one. And like the other day I made from Rick Martinez. He has this taco recipe and it was like, I made the black beans from scratch. I made salsas from scratch. I made the tortillas from scratch. And then you fried the tortillas in lard. And then
why not?
Right. And then you make, so it's almost like a crispy kind of chalupa-y vibe.
Right.
And then you make this like charred skirt steaky kind of thing that's marinated in something. And I'm not doing this any justice whatsoever, but it was like one thing after another after another. It took all day to make this.
Yeah.
And I was like, is it delicious? Absolutely. Would I make it again? Probably not.
But you live to tell the tale. Maybe you learned something right along the way and you ended up with a delicious meal.
Totally.
You don't have the time to do that every single day, but man, every once in a while it's a real treat.
So to me, that's really, because my time is so valuable. Like, so everyone's time is so valuable. I think time is one of the most precious commodities we have in our life. And so for me to take an entire day out of my time to do something like that, to me, that is fancy. Like do I want to get a duck breast and do something with it? Sure. But like, I'd rather like another day I made Kenji Lopez's cassoulet. And if anyone's not made a cassoulet before,
it's so good.
It's wicked good. Again, we're talking, I think it took 2 days to make this. It is a labor of love when you make an authentic one. And it was really, really, really good. But again, really not expensive ingredients, just took so much time.
That's at the heart of so much food culture, right? It's the throwaway cuts and the bycatch and everything else that used to be only regarded as peasant food. Now it's all elevated. It's how we make these great authentic and ethnic dishes. And it's where a lot of the food culture comes from. And the cassoulet doesn't get a lot of justice on an American menu.
No.
Typically you get a bowl of white beans with some shredded pork in it. It's really travesty. Like
so sad. No, so you need the duck confit. You need there's
so many layers.
So many layers. Yeah. Absolutely. And those white beans, if you do them right,
it's so creamy.
So creamy. Again, days.
I worked at a Spanish restaurant for a little while, and I would take the leftover cassoulet, maybe it had reached its 3rd day and we couldn't really serve it anymore. So it would be quote unquote expired, but you could take a little bit of leftovers, and I would take it actually cold and I would combine it with confit tomato that I had also done in duck fat. And I would spread it on hot sourdough toast as a snack. Oh my gosh. It's like a whole other level.
Hungry. I am so hungry right now.
It's like basically the fanciest bean dip you would ever eat.
So yummy.
Well, I want to hear all about Netflix. Tell me about Cook at All Costs.
Oh man. I'm on TV. I'm on TV worldwide. That was a trip. That was so much fun. For those who don't know, I did a show called Cook at All Costs. It's streaming worldwide on Netflix. I'm in episode 2, The American Diner. I had absolutely no expectations. I just knew it was going to be fun, and which is why I applied. And it was like rounds and rounds of auditions, camera auditions. It filmed in Toronto. It was a hoot and a half. And wow. And the thing was, they didn't tell you. So anyway, after all the auditions, the whole process started in December of 2021.
Yeah.
And we didn't find out. We got on the show, me and the group of people that I worked with, until maybe 2 weeks, week and a half before filming. I think we found out 2 weeks before filming. And then a week and a half before, a few days later, they told us what our theme was, American Diner. But they didn't give us any rules. They didn't give us the premise of the show. They didn't tell us a damn thing. They're like, well, it's kind of like Chopped, sort of. I'm like, okay. So then, you go through and, I'm trying to do all this back research. Yeah, all these cooking competition shows. So I watched them anyway, but then I really watched them and really tried to pay attention to different things. Unfortunately, it was nothing like that because you can't have any recipes. I didn't know what ingredients I would have in a pantry. Right. I didn't know anything. And all I knew was American Diner, which is such a broad term and I knew there would be multiple rounds of cooking, but I didn't know how much time we'd have. I didn't know any of the rules.
You didn't know what each course was going to be, right? And you know, when somebody says the word American Diner to me, it makes me think of that old I Love Lucy episode where they open a restaurant and they're arguing the whole time about what it's going to serve. Yeah. One side wants a little Cuban restaurant. Yes. One side wants the old school American diner.
Totally.
I can't even, it's so much with life, right? No matter how much you prepare, until you get there, you really don't know.
And American Diner, when you hear American Diner, what dish goes into your
Patty melt.
Okay. When I hear it, I think breakfast. I think steak and eggs. I think
the old Mike City diner over there in Boston, huh?
Yeah. Anytime I'm in a diner, whether it's New England diner culture isn't like New York or New Jersey diner culture. It's more
correct
breakfast. And
yes.
That's kind of it. New Jersey is a whole nother, and New York and New Jersey is a whole nother level of diner culture. And if you've never been to a diner in New Jersey after drinking way too many adult beverages, you are missing out, my friends. But even then, I'm still getting breakfast because that's just what I grew up with. And plus, that's just who I am. And so when I heard the theme, I was like, oh man, this is tough because diners vary so much in our great nation that like what is popular here in New England is not necessarily the same in the South or even the Northwest or all the different, nooks and crannies of our country. That's a very broad term. Very broad. So it
would almost be like if they said your theme is lunch.
Yeah, right. I know. And I eat most of the time I just eat whatever I'm shooting or the night before or whatever for lunch. So like you're talking to the wrong girl with that too. I'm not like getting a sandwich. Like I'm not like, oh, I'm gonna have a salad or a sandwich. No offense to the people who can, but like I don't, it's not me. And so like I went into it with a handful of recipes in my noggin that I knew I didn't need to think about because you're on camera. I mean, it's not live, but like you've got cameras in your face, you've got producers kind of talking to you as you're cooking and like other things. And so there's a lot of distractions. And I was like, well, I need to just focus on like what I know I can do. I can make hollandaise sauce without even thinking about it.
Right.
I can, don't ask me to make a biscuit. Like I can do it, but I'm not from the South. So like my biscuits, I'm from New England.
Do you make the New England, like the brown bread? Could you make that without a recipe?
No, I don't even like it. No offense to the people who like it. Like,
I mean, it's a bit of an acquired taste, but
yeah, it's not for me.
I don't think it's as ubiquitous as a biscuit is down here.
No. I was so excited to do it. And again, I didn't care if I won. I didn't care if I didn't win. I didn't care if all I didn't want to do was cut my fingers on TV. Like that is literally because the last thing I want to see, and you've seen it on every cooking competition, is somebody slices their finger and they hold it up and they say, medic. And then they get the finger condom on. And then it's a nightmare to try to slice with because now you're nervous. Now you're looking at the blood coming down.
Well, and it depends on how bad you did it, right? Like maybe you can't feel the end of your finger and now you're having to, I don't know. I mean, it's like, it's a great barrier for a lot of things, the finger caught, but I always 2 or 3 gloves over it. I never feel quite right about touching food after that with that.
100%.
It's gross.
Yeah, it's gross. They get kind of slippery too when they're wet. And like, it's just, no. So it's like the one thing I don't want to do is cut my finger. Like that's it. I don't care if I don't get food on the plate. I just don't want to cut my finger. It was insane. It was so much fun. So much fun.
Well, it looked amazing. I won't spoil the episode for my listeners, but I would encourage everybody to check it out. It's a really fun series on Netflix, Cook at All Costs. Episode 2, American Diner, featuring new friend of the podcast, Beth Fuller. All I have to say is in relation to our current food prices, $1,500 lardons doesn't seem that far off, but that's a little inside baseball, but I'll let everybody watch it. It's a really fun episode.
Seriously, I know. $1,500.
What an amazing experience and like opportunity that you had. It's crazy.
Yeah, it is crazy. I'm thrilled and I can't wait to see what comes next. For sure. But you got to create those opportunities. I said yes to the dress. So you gotta right. Honestly though, like, people look at people who are not necessarily me, but other people, and they're like, oh God, they're so lucky. Not always. I mean, sure, I do come from a little luck, sure, but I also don't turn down opportunities. I have insane follow through. So I really
you just got to be open and flexible.
Yeah, say yes.
Now that you've sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. No.
I was going to say, now that you've done one, would you do another?
Yeah, absolutely. Sure. I love being on TV. I love being in front of the camera. No problem. I like being behind it even more, but I also like being in front of it.
Behind and in front of it.
I am, yeah. I'm a switch hitter. That's who I am.
Wow. Okay. Mm-hmm. I was like, that's an anomaly because most people like one or the other.
No, I like them both. Mm-hmm. That's who I am.
I love that. Where can we find you online?
Oh gosh, everywhere. Now, if you go to my website, elizabethrfuller.com, you will see absolutely everything. My beautiful food photography, my portfolio, links to the Food Adventures podcast, links to the Netflix show, links to my Instagram, Elizabeth Fuller Photography. So elizabethrfuller.com.
Yes, and all the online spaces. I love it. If anybody needs an additional podcast to subscribe to, let's go on a food adventure. The Food Adventures podcast is fantastic. She's had dietitians on there, other chefs, other food podcasters. It's really, really fun to listen to, and I've listened to every single one. There was even an episode where she had her mom on there, Woman's Kitchen Wisdom. It was super fun as well, but I would encourage everybody to check it out. What are you cooking this week?
Well, like I said, tomorrow it's tacos and waffles. And then the day after that, I'm just going through the shot list. The day after that, it's focaccia and date night kind of vibe. Still need to figure that out.
Oh.
And then, so it's a ton of stuff. Tonight for dinner, I'm making Italian wedding soup because we have a snowy stretch coming here in New England. And like, I really need some soup in my life.
I'm so jealous.
No.
It was just 70 degrees here and then dropped back down to 50. And yeah, and it's one of those, like, you don't know whether to use the heater or the air conditioning. And then it's not cold enough for soup, but it's too cold for salad. And it's a conundrum.
Ah, what a conundrum. I would love that conundrum because right now it's just effing cold. It's so cold. And like shoveling and, oh gosh. Yeah.
I can't even imagine. I can't even imagine. One of these days, I'm going to get somewhere where it snows all the time, and I'm just going to make cassoulets and soups and stews all the time, and I'll never get tired of it.
All right, well then it looks like you're going to Canada, so
let's
have fun in the great outdoors.
And then I can just eat poutine all the time,
right?
Just bring on the cheese curds. Like I'm down for it. I'm down for it. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Oh, thanks for having me. It was a blast.
Have a wonderful day.
You too. I'll see you later.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
That's a wrap for today. Until the next episode of the Food for Thoughtcast, make good food, eat good food, share it, and be kind to one another.
Thanks so much for listening today. You are part of what makes us special, and we are so glad you joined us. Don't forget to rate, subscribe, and leave a review. Just like food, delicious podcasts are better when you share them with others. Come back for seconds wherever podcasts are served, and we'll catch you in the next episode of the Food for Thoughtcast.
You can find us on Facebook and Instagram at the Food for Thoughtcast or at www.foodforthoughtcast.com, where you can link to all podcast players, or you can send us an email at foodforthoughtcmc@gmail.com.